In my column in The Australian this weekend, I'm talking about regional cities. Who might actually be moving to regional cities? In Australia, we've had decades of failed attempts to decentralize the population behind us. We really tried to get people out of Melbourne, out of Sydney, into the regions, spread the load of population across Australia a bit better, but it didn't work despite all the policies. There's of course the issue of putting jobs into cities and then just trusting that population follows jobs. That's one part of the equation, how to amp up regional cities. But the other part, and this is the part that this column is focused about, is how do cities, regional cities, tell a positive story towards the population? How do they attract them? What kind of narratives can they actually tell, and which generations will actually move into a city? Well, the pre-boomers, people born before 1945, they won't be moving to the regions at scale, really, because there are too few of them around. There will be a sponge effect, meaning the old population that sits on really small country towns, tiny settlements really, they will move to the larger country towns throughout the 2020s because this is where the medical facilities are. So that's the pre-boomers. The baby boomers, they are actually too young throughout the next decade to be shifting, to be downsizing, to be resettling, for the last leg of life. So I wouldn't expect growth for the regional cities to come from the baby boomer population. The same is true for Gen X. Gen X, born 64 to 81, this is a generation right now with teenagers at home. This is a generation that right now is still paying off the family mortgage. So it's not the ideal time in the life cycle to uproot the family, to reevaluate your life choices. So we won't be seeing Gen X moving around at scale. Their kids, of course, the Gen X kids are Gen Zs. Gen Zs will still have to move to wherever their parents move, so they will actually stay in the parental home. And Gen Z, once they are old enough, once they're 18 plus, they will leave the parental home and move to the big cities where the big universities are, where the big employers are for their early careers. So you don't attract Gen Z to the regional cities in the 2020s. You might be able to keep them in the regional cities if the regions have attractive TAFE opportunities and attractive universities. But there are actually very few towns that fit these criteria. So if the future growth of the regions doesn't come from the boomers, from the pre-boomers, from Gen X, from Gen Z, where does it come from? Well, it does come, of course, from the Millennials. That might sound pretty scary to some if you have to rely on the millennial population for anything, really. But the 2020s is the decade where the millennials, and we define them as born between 82 and 99, where the millennials finally reach family formation stage of the life cycle. Millennials procrastinated an awful long time, stayed at university longer, invented the gap year, really pushed out marriage or partnering up, and then pushed out first childbirth. But they are going to form families like any other generation before them, much the same. And now millennials are looking for 3 and 4 bedroom houses to raise a family in, to have the spare bedroom for the working from home office. That's what millennials will be focusing in or what they will be focusing on this decade. So that'll be difficult to actually afford a home like this in the inner city. So I would expect that the millennials will be seeking out increasingly, not necessarily at scales that we see population explosions in these cities, but millennials will be seeking out regional towns, regional centers really, that are connected to the capital cities. So I think we can be pretty sure of this. And it's not just that they are seeking large enough and affordable homes. It's also that some millennials have been seriously disillusioned by their life in the big city. You spent time at university, sure. Maybe your university degree didn't really immediately lead into an early career opening that you hoped for. So you continued working in the hospitality or retail sector while you were maybe pursuing yet another extension of your degree. But then COVID-19 hit, and you were the first of the bunch to be laid off. So you're actually very frustrated. You're very disillusioned by the big city. So there is a chance for big cities, for regional cities, who tell the right story to attract back the millennials into the city. So the millennials that moved from the regional towns, you can grab them back. But you can also completely attract population, millennials, if you tell the right story. If you tell millennials a very loud and proud narrative of how to invest your time, your future energy, and how to provide decent schooling, decent sporting opportunities for their kids over the next 2 decades, really. Loud and proud regional towns right now have a once in a couple of decades opportunity, really, to grow their population base. So right now is the time for regional councils, for regional mayors, for regional businesses really to tell a loud and positive story about their town, because there is a general appetite in the millennial population to seek out regional towns. Not at scales. Regional towns won't be flooded by population, but they can kickstart their growth. But it's only for the loud and proud cities that manage to tell a positive story. And of course, it helps when these cities are connected with decent infrastructure to the big smokes of the states.